Hi everyone, Nathan here from Mighty Lancer Games, and today we're just going to do a short video about the difference between plastic, Reaper bones, metal and resin figures. Here at Mighty Lancer Games we get asked a lot, because we sell such a wide range of figures from a lot of different miniature ranges, we get asked what the difference is between plastic and bones and resin and metal miniatures are, because a lot of people might only have ever painted plastic figures or bones figures, or they might only ever painted metal figures and they want to know what the bones figures are like in difference. So we just thought we'd focus in and tell you a little bit about the difference between the different ranges. So here on the table in front of me I've got a Games Workshop plastic figure. This is the Chaos Lord out of the Blackstone Fortress set. I've got two Reaper figures here, which are the same figure, which is the Whispering Tyrant from the Pathfinder range. So this one here is the bones version and this one here is the metal version. Okay, so the price difference between the two is about £10. So this guy's, we'll put the price up here. And this guy in the end is called Wrath Nadal, I think his name is. And he is a D&D Collector's Series miniature by Gale Force 9. So he's a resin figure that we stock the whole range of. Okay, so what are the main differences between these figures? In terms of preparation between these, I would treat them all exactly the same. So when you've taken the parts off the sprue or the little bit of flash, I would wash them all in soapy water, even the plastic figures, just to make sure you get any release agent off so your paint doesn't have any issue in sticking to the model itself. So do that before you glue it together. If it's something that is on a sprue, like the Games Workshop figures will come all on a plastic sprue, I'll just wash the whole sprue in some warm soapy water, just make sure you get any residue off there. Just prevent any issues, and then your super glue or your plastic glue that you're using shouldn't have any problem adhering the different parts together. But the main differences are, I guess, is plastic is generally a hard plastic, and you'll stick it together with a polystyrene cement. You can use super glue, but a polystyrene cement works better because it melts the plastic, fuses the joint together. Okay, the bones miniatures are a more PVC plastic, so they tend to be very soft and easily mouldable, a little bit more like resin if anything, and you would use super glue to stick those together. Super glue gets a really fast solid joint on the bones figures. Okay, metal figures, again, super glue or an epoxy glue to stick those together, and you just need to make sure you clean all the joints up as you're putting them together. And the resin figures are the same. So with resin and the bones figures, washing them is really important to get any residue off, because the surfaces can very often be glossy, and your glue and the paint, if you've still got any residue on there, as you put the paint on, you'll see it kind of running and pooling as it goes onto the surface of the miniature, and then you know that you maybe need to get your toothbrush out and just give it a good scrub with the soapy water just to get any residue off. But what we've done here is, so apart from the Games Workshop figure, because with him being in the grey plastic you can see the detail on him pretty well, but with the others I've just given them a wash with Reaper grey, or undercoat with Reaper grey liner, which is quite a thin paint, somewhere between a primer and an ink, that is just a really good undercoat and really picks out the detail, just so you can see the difference. So typically a lot of people like to think that resin miniatures have the greatest detail or the greatest possibility for detail, and it is really crisp when you've got a good moulding, but it is only as good as the miniature itself. So this guy is one of the D&D Collector's Series minis, like I said, and there's a whole range of figures in this range. So they do the Xanathar, if you're familiar, which is the big beholder. They do some fantastic giants and what have you, and all the sculpting is really, really nice. So this guy comes in a little pack of two with another white, I think he is, the other named character, and all these tie in with the various D&D adventures. So these will be the named characters out of the various D&D published adventures that you can buy. Okay, so and then these two, this is the Whispering Tyrant. So this is from an iconic Pathfinder adventure. So Pathfinder, different role-playing game to D&D, similar kind of premise, but this will be he's a bad guy essentially from a Pathfinder event. Sorry, waffling now. But as you can tell, because you'll be able to see some close-ups. So between the bones and the metal miniature, despite the fact that the price difference is so high, once you've got an undercoat on, the detail level between the two figures is virtually imperceptible. The bones figure maybe is slightly less detail, but I would be more than happy to paint this guy and put him on display as I equally would with this one. I mean, they're both beautiful figures. I picked this figure to illustrate this fact because it is one of my favourite minis out of the range. So not all of the metal figures from Reaper are available as bones figures, and vice versa, but they are getting there with the range, and eventually they probably will all be available with the thing. And then the Games Workshop figures. So you can get Games Workshop resin figures. They're generally direct order figures, which we can order in for customers here at Mighty Lancer Games. So plastic miniatures generally come on a sprue, like this one. And so this is some towel, but this guy in particular, the Chaos Lord, comes in maybe about 10 parts on a sprue that'll look a bit like this. You'll have to clip the various parts out and glue them together. Just use a sharp knife to trim any extra mould lines off and what have you, and then you'll be able to stick them together with no problem. Okay, so the bones miniatures tend to come in one piece, unless it's a larger model. It might come in maybe like 10, 12 pieces if it's a very large model, but they have very obvious connection points where you can put the various parts together. Very similar, in fact, to the metal miniatures that you may be familiar with. So metal miniatures, this particular figure came in 4 parts. The 2 horns and the cloak were separate components, and you can obviously see where they're supposed to fasten on the figure. So some metal figures might come in a lot more parts. Some of them single miniatures, single hero figures and what have you might just come in a single part, and then you can just either glue them onto a base or paint them as they are and go from there. And resin figures tend to come, because of the moulding process for resin figures tend to come in maybe a few more parts than that. So this guy in particular actually only came in 2 parts. So his head was separate and his body. So he's like maybe an exception to the rule. Normally I would expect that his arms and his head might be separate parts on the figure, on the little bit of flash, and then you can glue him together from there. So there really is nothing to be scared of. If you've always painted, say, metal figures, there's nothing to be scared of from tackling any of these other minis, because where you may have had to glue half a dozen parts together on some of your character figures or larger models, all you're going to have to do is maybe tackle a few more or a few less parts, and preparation wise there really isn't that much difference. So a good clean before you start undercoating and gluing the parts together, that's the key. So back to the level of detail. So it's widely regarded that bones miniatures have a slightly less level of detail than anything else, and I must admit I've not really found that, but that's kind of the industry regard, is that the bones figures and other PVC based figures do have a lesser detail. So a lot of stuff that you'll find in a board game, for example, will have a lesser quality of detail, but bones figures are pretty cool, which is why we undercoated these, so you can see the detail in it. The GW Plastic and a lot of other companies' plastic minis, the detail and quality of the figures in the modern age is significantly better than it was 20 years ago. So most plastic figures now have a level of detail to rival any metal figure. Metal figures generally absolutely awesome, and what most people regard as the figures that they want to paint. And there really is a finer level of detail available in resin minis, but it's very much subjective to the sculpt, as I said earlier on. So the choice is yours. All of these types of figures are available, and they're all a joy to paint. So you really just need to go with a figure that you like the look of and get stuck in. Don't be scared. Preparation is key. So clean it up, stick it together, undercoat with a solid undercoat. So we recommend brush on primers and the liners that we'll show you over here. And then once you've got it undercoated with a reasonable smooth coat of undercoat, then go to work with your best paintbrushes and do the best paint job that you possibly can. So thanks for watching, and hope you like our video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a great day.